everyone, this is Miss Becca. Today we're going to talk about some kings and some queens. So I'm going to read off a list of kings and queens and royal people, and I want you to keep track with your fingers of how many of them you have ever heard of. So if you've ever heard of them in your life, you get to have them as a point. Most points wins. All right, so first person, King Ashoka. King Menkaure. Neither of those? Okay. 3, Queen Fujing. Nope, okay. King Egbert. What about Queen Tai? Queen Gorgo? That's 6. How many did you get? All right, well, what about Queen Esther? I bet you've heard of her. Now, these other ones you may not have heard of as much, so I will tell you who they are. The first one was King Ashoka. He was the king of India around 304 BC. Remember, BC is before Jesus came, so that many years plus 2020, because that's when I'm filming this video. King Menkaure was the king of Egypt in 2504 BC, so like 4,000 years ago. Queen Fujing was the queen in China. King Egbert was one of the first kings of England. He ruled in 827 AD, so a little over 1,000 years ago. Queen Tai was the queen of Egypt in 1398 BC, and Queen Gorgo was the queen of Sparta, which is in Greece, in 490 BC. Now, out of those 7 people that I named, I bet the only one you knew was Queen Esther. Queen Esther was the queen of Persia in 486 BC. So 486 years before Common Era is what we call it, before Jesus came around. So you add that to the year it is. So it's 2020, we add 486 to there. So why is it that you know Queen Esther, but you don't know all these other people? There have been thousands of kings and queens of countries that are both around and not around anymore, and we don't know that many of them just offhand. So Queen Esther was famous not just because she was queen, but because she did something really remarkable as queen. And we always say that she was courageous. Queen Esther is famous because she embraced where God put her and showed courage. She was courageous, even when things were really, really scary. We're gonna read the story of Esther, so find a comfy spot, maybe over on the couch, maybe with a blanket, maybe with a puppy, and get all comfy, cozy, and ready to read. While we read the story, I want you to think about ways that Esther was courageous, and think of all the things that had to happen in order for this story to work. Once you're all nice and cozy, we're going to read the story of Esther. So Esther is really easy to find in the Bible because it is its own book of the Bible. It's in the Old Testament, so that means it was before Jesus came. And we're just gonna get right into it. I'm not gonna read it word for word because even though it's not that long, that would be a long video, but you are welcome to go read it yourself later. I'm just gonna kind of tell the story as we go through. Once upon a time, in the country of Persia, which no longer exists, but it's kind of in like the Middle East area, there was a king named Xerxes. And he had a queen named Vashti, and he was having a party, and he wanted Queen Vashti to come on out, and she did not want to come out. It doesn't say why she didn't want to. Maybe she was tired, maybe she was sick, I don't know. But Xerxes got so mad that he threw her out of the palace. Yeah, not very nice. Then he needed a new queen, so he went and he had his officials go and find all of these girls in like the right age to come to the palace. He spent months and months and months getting all nice and pretty and getting all these beauty treatments and facials and hair masks and all the things. And finally, they came before the king, and he met a girl named Esther. Now, Esther was a Jewish girl, and in Persia, Jews were not considered equal to the Persians, and they didn't like them a whole lot. So Esther's adopted father, Mordecai, told her not to tell the king or anybody else that she was Jewish, and she became the new queen. Now, meanwhile, Mordecai, Esther's adoptive father, had been kind of hanging around the palace just to keep a little bit of an eye on her. And he happened to overhear that some people were planning to kill the king. Now, obviously, that's a pretty big deal. So he told Esther, and then Esther was able to tell the king next time she saw him. And she told him that Mordecai was the one who had found out the plot. She didn't tell him that they were related, but she did tell them it was Mordecai who figured it out. Now, meanwhile, Mordecai was hanging outside the palace, and people were going in and coming out and all of those things. There was a guy who worked for the king. His name was Haman, and he was very, very high up in the king's service. And Haman was so important that everybody would bow to him when they saw him. But Mordecai refused to do it. And this made Haman really, really angry. So finally Haman got sick of Mordecai refusing to bow, and he found out that he was Jewish. I don't quite know what was going through his head. Instead of trying to get rid of just Haman and sending him away or killing him or anything like that, he decided to get rid of all of the Jews. So Haman wrote up a decree, and he went to King Xerxes, and he told Xerxes, he said, there's these people and they're kind of spread all over the kingdom, and they live very differently than us. They don't serve the same gods as us, they don't have the same rituals as us, and they keep to themselves, and they're a little bit weird. He said they do not believe in the king's laws, and they don't obey the king's laws. So the king probably doesn't want them around. So we should issue a decree that would destroy them. It literally says, destroy them in my Bible. Crazy. And the king didn't really read it very closely, and so he was like, okay, do whatever you want with these people, not knowing that it was his wife's people. So Mordecai comes to Esther, and he is obviously freaking out because this is happening, and the king doesn't know the whole story. And so he goes to Esther and he says, Esther, you need to go to the king and you need to fix this. Like, you can't just let them get rid of all our people and destroy us. That's crazy. But back then, the king was the most important person, and you couldn't just walk up to the king. Even if you were his wife, you couldn't just go to the king unless he summoned you, unless he asked for you to come to him. So Esther was like, oh, I don't know about that. And she was very scared and very nervous, and she said, I can't go to the king, unannounced. He has to summon me. And then Mordecai said in Esther 4:12, when Esther's words were reported to Mordecai, he sent back this answer. Do not think that because you are in the king's house, you alone of all the Jews will escape. For if you remain silent, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place, but you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. So Mordecai is saying, if you don't do this, someone else will. God will send someone else. He's not just going to let Xerxes destroy us all. And this might be the whole reason why you are queen in the first place. So Esther goes and went to the king's hall, and he saw Queen Esther standing in the court. He was pleased with her and held out his golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther approached and touched the tip of the scepter. That means that he is okay with her coming, and he's not going to kill her just for walking up to him. And he asks what she needs, and she says that she would like to prepare a banquet for both him and for Haman. So they go to the banquet, and the king says, what's your petition? What do you need? And she says, I would like to throw another banquet for you tomorrow with Haman. The king and Haman went to the queen's banquet, and as they were there, the king said, Queen Esther, what is your petition? Whatever you want will be given to you, even if it's half the kingdom. I will give it to you. And in Esther 7:3 it says, then Queen Esther answered, if I have found favor with you, your majesty, and if it pleases you, grant me my life. That is my petition. And spare my people. That is my request. For I and my people have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated. And King Xerxes was so upset, and he said, who is he? Who's this person that's trying to kill you and annihilate everybody? And Esther said, it is Haman. So the king had Haman killed because he was trying to kill his wife. He had Mordecai come to the palace and become his new chief in command instead of Haman, and the decree went away and the Jewish people were safe. That is a crazy story. There's so many things going on all at the same time that just have so many moving factors. Even though there's really 3 main characters, Esther, King Xerxes, Mordecai, and Haman. Okay, really there's like 4 main characters, but there's so much happening in those 4 main characters in just a short period of time. Now, when Mordecai came to Esther and told her that all these things were happening with the Jewish people, he said that Esther was put there for such a time as this. Mordecai was implying that Esther didn't just happen to get there. The queen before her didn't just happen to get kicked out of the palace. The king didn't just happen to go looking for a bride in the city where Esther lived. Esther didn't just happen to be there. All of these things were orchestrated and put there on purpose because of God. And God does the same things now. So you are where you're supposed to be on purpose. I'm where I'm supposed to be on purpose. You are at your school on purpose. You're at your church on purpose. You may not know what the purpose is yet, but someday it'll be clear that there was a very specific reason why you are in the place that you are supposed to be. Have you ever had a situation where it seems like you were just in the perfect place at the perfect time? I will tell you 2 stories about this. One is, Jesus related, and one is not at all. We'll start with the one that's not at all. So last year on Black Friday, which is the day after Thanksgiving, when all the stores have big sales, my mom and I went to a store. And at this store, they had these coupons that were like scratch offs. So it had like a layer on it, and when you got to the register, you would scratch it off, and then you had whatever that coupon was. So you didn't know what the coupon was until you walked up there. It told us, what it could be. So it said it could be like $5 off, like $20 off. We're like, okay, we might get $5 off, cool. And so we got up to the cash register with all of our stuff, and the cashier scratches off the coupon, and it was $100 off. $100. I could not believe how crazy that was, because it was completely random who got each of the coupons. I'm sure they had a lot less $100 coupons than they had $5 coupons. They probably had lots of those, so your chances were higher to get those. And we just happened to go. We even had 2 different newspapers, and we happened to hand that one to the lady. You might be thinking, Miss Becca, this has nothing to do with the Jewish people or Esther, but it kind of does. Now, this is one of those stories that's in the right place at the right time. God does this a lot. He did it with Esther, and he does it even now. God has used other people in my life to help me by putting them in the right place at the right time. One example is a long time ago. I was helping out in children's church. I was just in like middle school, and I was having a terrible day. I was so irritated at the stuff they were having me do, and I was just so upset and so frustrated that I was like, I think I'm gonna quit. Like, I'm not going to teach children's church anymore. I'm not gonna help. I'm just gonna go to big church and I'm not gonna help. They can deal without me. It's fine. And as I'm thinking these thoughts, I walk down the hallway in the church, and this little girl who'd been there maybe 2 or 3 times, like she wasn't even a regular, just 2 or 3 times she'd been there, ran up to me and threw her arms around me and hugged me and said, I love you, Miss Becca. And my heart melted, and I realized that even if I was frustrated, even if I didn't see why I was in that position, why I was there helping, God had a plan. So God put me in that children's church room with that child on purpose. There was a reason for it. I can't tell you exactly what the reason is, but there was a reason for it. And God also put her in the right place at the right time in my life so that she could give me that hug, which didn't seem like a big deal to her. But that hug helped me so much because it kept me from quitting. And I've now been teaching children's church for like 10 years. I mean, it's been a long time. So you think if that little girl hadn't come up and hugged me, I might have quit. I might not have helped all of those kids. I might not have helped all those people. I might not have known all those people. So in your life, look for opportunities where you're put in the right place at the right time. If you have those random thoughts like, maybe I should go hug this person, it might be because God wants you to. Also look for places where you can be courageous, just like Esther was. It maybe doesn't take a lot of courage to come up and hug someone, but it definitely took a lot of courage for Esther to go up to the king knowing he could kill her just for walking up to him, and she did it anyway. Now God was looking out for her, so she was safe, but if she hadn't have done that, then she wouldn't have helped. She wouldn't have gotten the Jewish people released. She wouldn't have revealed that it was Haman that was doing all of these things. And maybe that means that the decree would have gone into law and people would have died. Or maybe it means that God would have used somebody else to fix the situation. When you're looking for opportunities to be courageous, and if there's something that maybe you feel like you need to do, like stand up for somebody else, or do the right thing in class even when other people aren't, or tell someone when you're thinking even if it's really hard and you don't think they're gonna want to hear it, all of those things take some courage. And if you don't do it, someone else will. Well, maybe not the telling your feelings part, but if you don't stand up for somebody, someone else might. God might use somebody else in that situation, and then you kind of lose out on all the cool stuff. If Esther had not helped the Jews and she had just been like, no, I can't do it, do you think we'd have a whole book about her in the Bible? No, she would be like those 6 people we talked about at the beginning that you had no clue who they were. You only know who Esther is because she was put in the right place and she was courageous enough to do what she was supposed to do. I like to think of Esther as wearing a crown full of jewels, and each of her jewels representing an aspect of herself. Things like how she was courageous, things like how she was loyal to Mordecai and did the right thing. What are some ways that you can be courageous? And what are some attributes that you would like to have? When you're remembered years from now, do you want people to remember that you were courageous, that you were loyal, that you were smart, that you were kind? What do you want people to remember you by? In the printables, there is a little crown printable. So what I want you to do is print out the crown, take the little jewels, write what you would like to be remembered for. So you could write courageous or smart or whatever, and put them on your crown so that you can be adorned with all of the jewels of your character. And then you can go add anything else to make it nice and pretty. I can't wait to see what you came up with. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.